Hello, Hayes. What is the balance between prioritizing friendship and romantic partnership? And I guess more specifically, what do we owe our single friends who are valuable people in our lives? And what can single friends reasonably expect of partnered friends? I'll admit that I'm bitter, but as an intentionally single person, constantly watching romantic relationships take the only spotlight in friends' lives is very lonely. I watched my former best friend slip away recently because she never suggested plans and she regularly bailed on nights we did plan together to hang out with her boyfriend instead. We're not young, and this was not her first relationship, and she said she wasn't willing to spend any of her free time away from her partner. Probably most egregiously, my mother canceled a fun trip to Florida to visit friends because her now husband was called into work and couldn't join her anymore. And apparently it never occurred to her to go alone and see her friends anyway. These are extreme examples, but they're not the only times I've witnessed similar patterns with other people. Maybe I have my single goggles on, but why do platonic friendships always have to give way? Why do we expect single friends to come back unhurt and like nothing changed if and when romantic relationships end? This is the single person's point of view, but I value your input as a kind and nuanced married person. What do you think, Hayes? Yours, intentionally single. Intentionally single. I'm also so curious about what you mean by that. Intentionally single right now, as in I'm choosing not to date right now to focus on myself and my friendships and my work and all of the other rich and wonderful things in life that don't have to do with romantic partnership? Or is this a lifestyle choice, as in I have made as in intentionally childless, like you've made a decision for your life to not be in a relationship? I'm so curious by that choice of words. Before we really talk about your letter, I just want to acknowledge and validate the experience of being burned by friends. And I think that a lot of people can relate to that experience of feeling left behind while a friend or someone close to you enters a new season and isn't nurturing your relationship in the way that you feel you are or that you want to. And it doesn't just happen when one person enters a relationship. I think this happens with career. It can happen with mental health struggles. It can happen when one person experiences loss. I'm so interested by your question. What do partnered friends owe their single friends who are valuable people in their lives? So much of it is dependent on if both people are actually invested in the friendship. A brutal truth is that sometimes we have friends that we are more invested in. I say that not to comment on your specific relationships, but in general, when we're like, what do our partnered friends owe us? Well, the answer really depends on whether they see you as a person they want to keep in your life. It could be that this friend has attachment issues or is getting swept up in the honeymoon period or isn't a good friend. Or it could just mean that it's revealing to you in plain sight what this friendship actually was the entire time. For the purpose of this conversation, we're talking about friendships where they are on the same page. To go back to your question, what do partnered people owe their single friends and what can single friends expect of their partnered ones? I love the words owe and expect. They're so charged, and hazelnuts know that I love to unpack really charged language. So let's start with, what do we owe? What do we owe our single friends? The concept of owing someone is funny business because there's two extreme ends of the spectrum. On one end, there's a crew that's like, we don't owe anyone anything. Then on the other end, there are people who view their relationships always in terms of principle, tit for tat, and they measure the relationship based on a checklist of who's doing what for who. I find that those types of thinkers don't often leave room for nuance and flexibility, which are really important things in any relationship. In that way, owing, using the language, what does someone owe me, it can be a dangerous word. It can quickly lead to entitlement if it's not being used by a reasonable person leveraging their emotional intelligence. And we can all be unreasonable sometimes. So if you are in a state of mind or you're facing a challenge and you're sort of losing your ability to think critically and to make sound choices, which I certainly happens to me all of the time, talking about what someone owes us can make us inflexible, and it can quickly be a way to lose friends. Meaningful, sustainable relationships, they involve thoughtfulness and compromise and stepping out of oneself from time to time to cater to somebody else's needs, to show up for people in the way that they need, not just the way that you want to be shown up for. For example, I do not like going to clubs. Okay. I hate going to clubs. I really am not a big partier. I was never a big partier. Lots of my friends do. Lots of my good friends like to party. And when they celebrate something important or joyful in their lives, they want to celebrate by going to a club or going to a rave or just doing something that I don't like to do. I will do that for them when it matters to them, even though I don't like doing those things myself. Part of being a good friend for me means stepping out of my comfort zone sometimes to celebrate my friends the way they want to be celebrated? Do I owe it to any of my friends to celebrate them in ways that they want to be celebrated, even though I don't like it? I guess, but I wouldn't use that language because I don't think about my relationships in terms of what I owe them or what they owe me. I do things because I love them and because I want to make them feel special in the ways that they want to feel special. I don't think about my friends in terms of what I owe them or what they owe me. I do things for them that might put me outside of my comfort zone because I love them and I want them to feel special, and they do the same for me. But to indulge your question, what do we owe our single friends who we love and value? Here's what I owe my single friends. We owe our single friends quality time. Not necessarily the same amount of time because the pie is split differently now, but the same quality of time and care. We owe our single friends our interest and curiosity about their season of life. We owe our single friends our celebration of their accomplishments, of their joys that don't have to do with being in a relationship, because there is more to life than being in a romantic relationship. And in general, we should stop celebrating people only when they get engaged or get married or have a baby. We owe our single friends sensitivity and discretion when it's necessary. For example, if they're struggling, if they're sad right now about the fact that they're not in a relationship, maybe we don't sit there and brag about how amazing ours is. At the same time, we shouldn't isolate our single friends and assume they don't want to hear about our life and our relationship simply because we're afraid of hurting their feelings. We owe our single friends doing single girl things when it matters and when they ask. And a single girl thing can mean, I don't know, it can mean whatever you want it to mean. And this last one happens maybe later in life as fewer people in the friend group become single. But we owe our single friends recognition of their experience as a single person. That isn't a blanket statement because some people who are single won't view it as part of their identity. But if it is part of their identity, if it's something if it's something that they feel like they're going through, it matters to them, it's a topic of interest for them, we should acknowledge that topic of interest. We shouldn't erase their singlehood because it makes us uncomfortable. We also owe our single friends specificity and not just assuming they're like every other single person we know because they're single. They're still our friend with unique experiences and feelings, and we should want to know what it's like for them. And this one's super specific, but I also think we owe the single people in our life our attention when we're in situations that call out their singleness in a way that might be uncomfortable for them. For example, if you go to a wedding and you have one single friend and everybody else is in a relationship, you can make sure that you're keeping an eye on that single friend and that you're grabbing them to dance with you on the dance floor, that you're going to get shots with them, that you're hanging out with them and not leaving them by themselves because they're single. So those are some things. Now that we've talked about the what we owe part of your question, I want to talk about the second, which was what can we expect of partnered friends? Well, from the people in your life who are good friends and who want to be good friends, I think you can expect the things that I just listed. But I also think that we should not lump all of our partnered friends into one bucket. So the question isn't, what can I expect of my partnered friends? It's, what can I expect of this partnered friend and that partnered friend? Because remember, Six Besties theory. Our friends each have different purposes in our life. What you can expect from a good time bestie who enters a new romantic relationship might be different than what you can expect from your North Star bestie who now is in a relationship. And what you can expect from someone who's actually a good friend is going to be different from somebody who was a casual friend. In your letter, you wrote, why do platonic friendships always have to give way? Well, I think at this point, you know that I think they don't always have to give way. They may have given way in your experiences, but I don't think they always have to do that. But in reflecting more about why do some people seem to let go of all of their platonic friendships when they're in a relationship? Because I know that category of person does exist. Sometimes we have a friend and their personality type, we can sort of expect that once they get in a relationship, we know they're going to be gonzo. But sometimes it happens and it surprises us. And the reality is that relationships do transform people and we can't predict how that's going to happen until it happens. You know, I'm not a psychologist. I don't study attachment styles. And I generally try to avoid using therapy speak and psychology language in my work because I'm not an expert on those things. I'm an expert in my experience and observations and writing. I don't know what the fuck I'm an expert in, but here I am. But there are plenty of psychological reasons why some people might cling to their partners once they enter a romantic relationship. Maybe somebody had a traumatic, unstable childhood and they never had a sense of family. So now that they're in a relationship and they finally feel that they have this stable sense of family, they may cling on to that and hold on to that in a way that's destructive to other areas of their life because it's bringing up all of these emotions from childhood. And if you know this about them, if you know that someone had an unstable, traumatic childhood, then maybe you can expect that this transition to being in a safe, happy relationship might be bumpy for them. You could give them grace and patience in that situation. If you yourself are in a relationship and you're noticing that you feel super, super attached to your new partner, you only want to spend time with them, it's a great thing to talk about with a therapist and figure out why you might feel that way. That's a question I always stop and ask myself whenever I'm having an extreme emotion that I can't really back up with evidence. I would ask myself, what is this bringing up for me? Why do I feel this way? However, I think generally, if a person is a solid friend and doesn't have mental health related attachment issues, I think you can expect the things that I listed before and what we owe our single friends. But I think you also must expect change, which leads me to you. You mentioned your bitterness as an aside in this letter. I know I'm bitter, but I don't think we should ever discount how our hurt does shape the way we see and behave in the world, how it stops us from tapping into our empathy and understanding other people, makes us lose our patience. If you've been repeatedly burned by people that you thought were friends, you've watched your mother make choices that you don't approve of or agree on, or things that you, with distance, can see have actually hurt her, you might be unfairly thinking about some of the relationships in your life. I have no doubt that people have burned you and that you've experienced real pain and that people have been bad friends to you. I don't doubt that. But I also want to leave room for the possibility that because of those experiences, you're being harsh on people, or you might not be being as flexible as a good friend needs to be, or having big reactions to things that might not warrant it. So the examples you gave me, though, again, they do seem egregious, but it was very interesting to me that you felt the example about your mom was more egregious than others. And I think it's interesting because that example doesn't actually directly impact you. It impacts you in the sense that it's your mother, but your mom's friendships, her relationships aren't yours. So I would encourage you to think about, how did this impact me? What was the direct impact on me? Because if your mom not going on her Florida trip with her friends feels the most egregious to you, we got to unpack why. I want you to think about, why do you care about that so much? I'm sure you have a really valid reason, and we got to figure out what it is. I thought the most egregious example that you gave was your friend saying that she isn't willing to spend any free time without her boyfriend. I mean, I'd love to be a fly on the wall to hear if that was verbatim, or if she said something like, I'm really stretched thin right now, and between work and my boyfriend, I don't have that much free time. I'm curious if it was something like that, which can be interpreted to mean I'm only spending my free time with my boyfriend. It could certainly be interpreted like that. Or if she verbatim said, I'm not willing to spend any free time without him. That's an egregious example for sure. That friend, even that friend though that you're giving as an example, if the friendship was otherwise strong and sturdy, I'm curious about why not give that friend some grace in that moment. There are friends that I have not spent time with in a year, and I'd hope they wouldn't just write me off as a former friend because I haven't seen them this year. Continuing on the topic of you, if we're going to ask what partnered friends owe you as a single person and what you can expect of them, you also have to think about what you owe them and what they can expect of you. And I think one of those things is flexibility. If your partnered friend is giving you quality time, maybe not the same amount of quality time, but they're giving you quality time, they're showing excitement for things in your life, they're looping you in, you should be flexible with them when they're not available, when they are spending time with their partner. I also think that you shouldn't ask them to choose. I would struggle with any friendships or any relationships where they were asking me to choose. I'm fortunate that my partner, Rob, never asks me to pick between him or my friends, and I'm fortunate that I have friends that don't ask me to pick. Don't put your friends in a position to choose. I also think that you should realize that their time is being split differently now. It's a small intellectual shift, but realizing that if your friend is in a monogamous relationship, they have one partner and they have many friends. So the pie is split differently now, and you should bring that understanding to the table. You also should give them permission to change, just like you have permission to change in your own life. When your friend gets into a relationship, they're not going to be the same person they were before. Hopefully they become better. My relationship with Rob has definitely changed my friendships. It's made most of them better. And you know what it also did? My relationship made me more confident and thoughtful and aware of myself as a person. And it gave me the courage to also end some friendships that weren't good for me. One part of your letter that gave me pause was, why do we expect single friends to come back unhurt and like nothing changed if and when romantic relationships end? That gave me pause. If this hypothetical friend, the one that's been in a relationship and now has broken up with their partner, If they haven't shunned you out, but the relationship has changed, because again, the time is more split and people change, it seems sad to say about them, why should I let them back like nothing has changed? A piece of their life is gone. Something that took up time and emotional energy in their life isn't there anymore. So naturally, they are going to have more time for the friendship piece of the puzzle. Now, if that person was a crappy friend, they made you feel bad about yourself, fine. But if that person didn't do those things, actually was a good friend, they never stopped being a good friend, they just weren't as available and as present as they were when they were single and they were in a different place in their life, why would you punish them for that? And I think that calls on us for when we're in a season of life and our friends are in a different season of life, when our instinct is to say, well, they're being a bad friend. They've changed. They're not there for me anymore. We need to pause and say, well, is that actually true? Or are things just different? How do I feel when I'm with this person? Because maybe you're just thinking about it all wrong. Maybe your expectations of them are unrealistic. Maybe you expected nothing to change. And if you go through life expecting nothing to change as your friends' lives change, then you are going to be disappointed, because change is part of life. I definitely think it's possible to have friends who are in different seasons of life as you. But don't forget, I did create the seasonal bestie for a reason. The seasonal bestie is the person who's in the same season of life as you. As a single person, your partnered friends might serve a different role in your life than your single friends do. If you say you're intentionally single, which again, I don't know exactly what you mean by that, I think you would benefit from having some people in your life who see the world in the same way as you on that topic. If you invest time in friendships with other single people, you might notice then that you stop putting so much pressure on your partnered friends to be exactly who they were before, because you're getting that energy from other areas of your life. This is why Six Besties theory exists and why it fucking rocks. The last thing I want to say is just don't give up on friendship. I know you've had some bad experiences and that fucking sucks. But don't give up on friendship, because I promise you there are friends out there who won't leave you high and dry. I feel like we say that to people when they're dating, you know? You're dating and you're not finding the one. Just keep going out there, keep meeting people. And we don't say that about friendship, but it's true. Just because you haven't found friends who will value you and love you and spend time with you outside of their romantic relationship, just because you haven't found them yet doesn't mean that you won't. Don't give up. Please don't let your past experience or what you've witnessed with your mom color your view of what friendship can be to the point where you don't give people a shot. And I hope that in talking about this and in going through all of the different ways to think about this, you'll take some responsibility for the way that you might be thinking about things. You'll have new clarity about what these friendships and relationships can be, what you can expect, but please don't give up hope. Your letter opened my eyes and made me think about things in a new way, and I've been thinking about it nonstop since I received it, and I know I'm going to keep thinking about it more and have a million more things to say and I bet I'll wish I'll have said them in this video, and I won't, and I'm going to have to, a challenging part of my job is thinking about things later and realizing, oh, I wish I could have said that. But you know what? For me to reframe that, that's actually not a challenging part of my job. It's an incredible opportunity, because I get to show up each week and answer new letters and bring what I learned last time to the new letters. So I thank you for that, Intentionally Single, because you've opened my eyes, not just in this letter, but I'll be thinking about your words and your perspective in letters for the future. But just don't give up. Don't give up. And partnered people are thinking about this in thoughtful ways too. And this next letter gives you a little glimpse into that.